What's up, everyone? Welcome into DodgerHeads, presented by DodgerBlue.com, part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. My name is Jeff Spiegel, joined this morning by Daniel Starkand, here to talk Dodgers baseball, but more specifically, a roster crunch that is coming, Daniel. Cavan Biggio, already the first casualty of this. Thank you for your service, Cavan Biggio, but it felt like it was about time for him to go.
Yeah, I talked about this yesterday with Matt on our little pregame show, but it was something that was going to happen, like at one point or another. Like we might have been a little surprised at the timing, like just because I guess he had started actually performing at an adequate level the last couple weeks. Not great by any means, but I guess the timing was a little surprising. But yeah, I mean, it was going to happen at some point. He was not in the mix for the postseason roster, and they got plenty of 40-man spots. They're either need to clear up right now or will in the coming weeks. So it was bound to happen eventually.
Well, here's the plan. Let's talk through the offense. Let's talk through the pitching, and then we'll talk through some quotes on Dave Roberts that I think maybe give us some clues as to how they're going to handle this. But let's start on the offensive side. And again, for those unfamiliar, 26-man roster, you get a maximum of 13 pitchers, which basically every team takes the 13 pitchers, which means you get 13 hitters as well. When I look at the Dodgers roster, when guys get healthy, I'm projecting health here, which I know some people may not like. I'm projecting health for all the guys they tell us are going to be back. When I look at that, I think there are 11 guys who are guaranteed spots on the 13 offensive side. That's Will Smith and Austin Barnes at catcher, Freddie Freeman at first, Lux at second, Rojas at short, Muncy at third. I've got Teoscar, Rosario, Betts, and Edman listed as outfielders. We can argue about that. And then Shohei Ohtani, in case you didn't know, probably going to be the DH for this team in the postseason. That's 11 guys with guaranteed spots, Daniel, in my estimation, which would leave 2 roster spots up for grabs between Kiké Hernandez, Chris Taylor, Jason Hayward, Kevin Kiermaier, Andy Pages, and James Outman. Pages and Outman can be optioned for the regular season if they want, and then brought back up for the postseason. But even if that were the case, that's still 2 roster spots for 4 guys. And I do want to express my apologies to Nick Ahmed, who I think is going to be getting the Cavan Biggio treatment here soon. But when you look at those 11 guys who are guaranteed spots, and then Kiké, Taylor, Hayward, Kiermaier, Pages, and Outman competing for the final 2 spots, give me your immediate reaction.
I guess my immediate reaction would be that they actually have some quality options, which is good to see. Like the fact that they are going to need to choose between some of these guys as opposed to just throwing whoever is healthy or whoever has a WRC plus above 50 or something like that. Like they actually have some quality options, so credit to them for the deadline they had, for some of the under the radar type pickups. But I thought you broke it down pretty well. I think those 11 guys you named are all pretty much locks. And then from there, I would probably say one righty bat and one lefty bat just to have on your bench. And you got enough versatility that it's not like you're looking for one specific position necessarily. Like you could play Edman in center if you have to. You could play him at short if you have to. Mookie could play kind of all over, and such. Kiké, of course. So it really, to me, it's going to come down to like who's performing in the last month and a half of the season here. I would say Kiké out of that group is probably the leader of the bunch. He's been playing better as of late, and he also seems to have the trust of Dave Roberts and the staff. Like he seems to be getting the most playing time these days. And then after that, to me, it's down to the 2 lefty outfielders. I guess 3 if you wanted to include Outman, but I don't really think he's in the mix right now. So I think it would be Hayward or Kiermaier for that last spot. Which in my I see Andy Pages being left out of the mix, which I guess would be kind of the headline in all this if that's the case, because he's been pretty much an everyday player now for the last few months, but he has been struggling. The defense, he can't really play center as we've seen, the last couple days. So that kind of decreases his value to this roster if he's not, able to play center. But I don't think anything is, solved right now. I think they're going to use these last 2 months as kind of an audition and see who emerges, who's healthy first and foremost, and then kind of go from there.
Yeah, I've said all along, I wonder about Pages because I know he's struggled of late. He still has the best batting line against lefties of any of these guys. I mean, he's hitting over 300 with an OPS of almost 800 against lefties on the season. It's against righties where he's struggled, hitting 220 with an OPS of 630. Of course, the last 2 months have been bad. So I think it's a great point. And we're going to get to some Kiké Hernandez quotes that makes it feel like he might be closer to a lock than not a lock which then you've got Chris Taylor, Jason Hayward, some veteran guys, Kiermaier, the defense. Like, they're going to have their choice of what they who they choose. Do you want the defensive guy in Kiermaier, or do you take a bat that you trust? Because that's definitely not going to be Kiermaier. Let's look at the pitching side of things. And this is, again, there's a crunch coming, and this is a good problem to have, but they're going to have to make some tough decisions. Starting pitching wise, if we project Yamamoto coming back, I think there's 3 locks starting pitcher wise: Glasnow, Yamamoto, Flaherty. Now, I'm talking mostly like looking ahead towards the postseason. So let's just assume they're planning for a 4-man rotation in the postseason, which everyone expects, and then 9 relievers. The reason I say that is because I've got 8 relievers that I think are already for the Dodgers group: Daniel Hudson, Evan Phillips, Blake Trinan, who did just go on the IL, but I would expect to be back, Alex Vesia, Brusdar Graterol, who just got called up, Joe Kelly, Anthony Banda, and Michael Kopech. I think those 8 guys are locks. That leaves 1 starter spot for River Ryan, Gavin Stone, Landon Knack, Clayton Kershaw, Walker Buehler, Bobby Miller. Take your pick of that group. And then only 1 spot for a reliever in that group as well, which could be any of the starters I didn't just mention that don't get the 4th starter spot, or Justin Robleski, Ryan Brazier, Brett Honeywell, or Michael Grove. So that's a ton of options there. And again, only Michael Grove and the rookie pitchers have the ability to be optioned in the regular season. But there's some real, like, Honeywell is on the outside looking in, and he's been unbelievable for the Dodgers. Ryan Brazier's had a nice little, rehab appearance. Robleski could be a real weapon. Ryan could be a weapon. So they've got a lot of tough decisions, even on the pitching side as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think the pitching will be, even tougher to sort out than the position players. And kind of like I was saying with the position players, like, health kind of sorts a lot of this out.
Yeah.
Like, we'll see who's left standing, going into October. We know it has not, they haven't stayed healthy for much of this season. So there's no guarantee that a lot of these guys are going to be healthy in October. I will say, like, you had Brusdar Graterol in the lock category, and we haven't seen him throw a single outing this year. So, if he is healthy and the Brusdar Graterol that we're used to seeing, then he definitely is a lock. But we kind of got to see that first. So that could potentially be another spot that opens up if, he has a setback or, comes back and doesn't look great. He's not missing bats, which, has been an issue for him in the past, admittedly. So, kind of similar to the position players, like, performance is going to decide a lot of this. Like, if like Evan Phillips has been struggling lately, I find it a hard time seeing him not being on the playoff roster. But if that continues, like, I don't know if anyone could be considered like a true, lock, so to speak. Like, I think it would take a lot for a guy like him to not be on the playoff roster. But with a lot of quality options comes, healthy competition, which is, I think, what you want to see. And the bullpen, like, let's be honest, the bullpen has struggled in recent weeks. It's not like they've been lights out.
Yeah.
So that kind of makes your decision making a little tougher there. But there are still 2 months here. It's good to see a lot of these guys coming back. Like, it's been a struggle this year. So if guys like, Graterol, Brazier, Michael Grove could all show that they're healthy and kind of back to what we know they're capable of, then that'll make the decisions, really tough down the line.
Yeah, come on, Daniel. The bullpen's been good for like 3 days in a row. There's nothing to worry about here, okay? I think
That's
Evan
fair.
Phillips, Alex Vesia, Hudson, these guys have put together like 2 consecutive good outings. I mean, what's there to worry about?
Yeah, hey, they're back, baby. Nothing to worry about.
You mentioned competition. That's the word that Dave Roberts used. He was asked about the impending roster crunch and said it creates urgency and competition. He acknowledged we have more guys coming than we have spots. He later said, at some point, it should be a meritocracy. The best players will play. That's the way that it should be. Look, this is what we want to hear. But I think the most interesting thing that came out of these quotes was one player in particular that he highlighted, and that was Kiké Hernandez. He singled out him as a guy who's playing his best ball. Quote, he's smart enough to realize there are other guys coming. I love this. It's like, well, now that Kiké realized that there's guys coming for his spot, now he's good. Last 53 at bats since the All-Star break, hitting 283, a 345 on base, a 434 slug, a 779 OPS. He's been playing just about every day at third base. So he's an interesting one because Dave seems to single him out here. We know he's got some clutch hits in his back pocket in his history. And so do you think Kiké Hernandez is maybe closer to that group of locks based on these quotes from Dave Roberts, past performance, maybe some of the positional needs a backup third baseman, a guy who can hit against lefties, that kind of a thing. Do you think he's closer to a lock than maybe some of the other guys on that list?
I definitely think he is, just based on these comments. Like, he didn't necessarily need to single Kiké out, but I feel like we know how the Dodgers organization as a whole feels about, Kiké.
Yeah.
They love him, and like you said, he has the track record. He's done it in the postseason, but like they kind of made sure to bring him back this offseason. They had another guy in Manuel Margot who could have played a similar type role, and they kind of went out of their way to trade him just to bring Kiké back. So he definitely seems like pretty close to a lock. You gave the second half numbers, like that's kind of what you want to see from him. Like if he does regress to the first half Kiké, then maybe he could kind of lose that positioning. Like, he's in pole position right now, that could change, but definitely feels like with everything he brings to the table, the versatility, the clutch hits in the playoffs, the trust within the organization, it definitely feels like he's pretty close to a lock right now.
Yeah, and it's interesting. And I think there's going to be a lot of people that hear that and are kind of surprised by it. Because we've talked on our show, he doesn't have a career-long track record of being an above-average offensive player. We know he can play a bunch of positions. There's debates about how good defensively he is at many of those positions, but we know he's a positive guy in the clubhouse. We know he has clutch hits on his resume. And again, to your point, it sure seems like the organization from Andrew Friedman to Dave Roberts has a real value on him for his ability to hit lefties, his ability to come up clutch, and just his ability to play all over the field. And so if a guy like Chris Taylor were on the outside looking in, which again, the math here suggests he might be, then you would think either Taylor or Kiké Hernandez is going to make this roster. And it sure sounds like Kiké Hernandez has the upper hand in that. So let us know what you think in the comments below. Are you happy to hear that Kiké is inching towards almost being a lock for the postseason, given his performance in the second half? Or is that concerning to you? Let us know below. That is Daniel Starkand. I am Jeff Spiegel. As always, thanks for joining us. We do have a live post-game show tonight, Tuesday night, Clayton Kershaw night for the Dodgers. So join myself and Anthony Witrato for that one, I believe. And then if you have missed it, we did post a huge prospect update with both Bruce Kuntz from Dodgers Digest and Justin Lorber from FutureDodgers.com. Ton of fun. Huge deep dive on the top 15 prospects, reactions to the trade deadline, a new number one prospect in the organization, a Dalton Rushing update, tons of content in there. So go ahead and check that out. Folks, enjoy the rest of your day. As always, go Dodgers.